You're not ugly, you just need to smarten yourself up and marry me." Lucy Evans couldn't believe what she had just heard. There she was, scavenging for scraps of food in a rubbish bin in a prominent London square, when an impeccably dressed man approached her and made the most preposterous proposal she had heard in her 32 years of life. It was then that he knelt right there amidst the bustling crowd, holding a small red box with a ring that sparkled under the fading evening light. "I know you don't know me," the man said, ignoring the curious stares of passers-by who began to gather around them. "My name is Daniel Roberts, and I desperately need your help." Lucy took a few steps back, clutching the plastic bag that held her few belongings. Her brown hair was disheveled. Her torn and dirty clothes told the story of the past 6 months living on the streets. But her brown eyes still held a spark of intelligence that had caught Daniel's attention the moment he saw her. "Are you mad?" she whispered, looking around and noticing that several people had stopped to witness the scene. "Get up from there. You're making a fool of yourself." "I'm not mad. I'm desperate," Daniel replied, remaining on one knee. "I need to get married before the end of this month, or I'll lose everything I've built in life." Lucy felt a mix of anger and shame. How dared this man appear out of nowhere and make such a humiliating proposal? She, who had been a respected lecturer in English literature at University College London, was now being treated like someone in need of charity. "I don't need your pity," she said, trying to walk past him. "Find someone else for your games." But Daniel quickly stood up and blocked her path, always maintaining a respectful distance. "It's not pity. It's a business deal, a contract. You help me, I help you. Simple as that. What kind of help could a man like you need from someone like me?" Lucy crossed her arms defiantly. "My grandfather left a clause in his will. To inherit the family business, I need to be married before I turn 35. I have exactly 23 days to find a wife, or everything will go to my cousin Penelope." Lucy studied his face. Daniel had sharp features, piercing blue eyes, and appeared to be around 34. His suit was clearly expensive. The watch on his wrist looked like it cost more than she had earned in a year when she was still working, but there was something in his expression that didn't seem false. "And why me?" she asked, still suspicious. "There are thousands of women in London who would marry you for your money." "Why don't you want my money?" Daniel replied, putting the ring box back into his jacket pocket. "I've seen you here in the square several times in recent weeks, always polite to everyone, always grateful, even when people treat you poorly. You have dignity, and that's rare." Lucy felt a lump in her throat. It had been so long since anyone had spoken of her with respect that she had almost forgotten how it felt. "You know nothing about me," she murmured. "I know you weren't always like this," Daniel said, gesturing towards her clothes. "I know something happened in your life that brought you here, and I know you're not here by choice." Tears began to well up in Lucy's eyes, but she held them back fiercely. She wouldn't cry in front of a stranger. "Even if I wanted to help you, what you're proposing is madness. Marriage isn't a game. It would only be on paper," Daniel explained. "A business arrangement. You marry me, help me secure the inheritance, and after a few months, we divorce. In return, I give you an amount that allows you to restart your life." Lucy looked around the square. Gradually, people lost interest and moved on. The sun was setting, and soon she would have to find a safe place to spend another night. 6 months on the streets had been enough to break any romanticism she might have had about life. "How much?" she asked, surprising herself. £500,000, British pounds. Lucy felt her legs weaken. It was enough money to completely start over, perhaps even leave London and begin a new life elsewhere. And what exactly would I need to do? Live in my house, appear at some social events with me, meet my family, convince my grandfather that we are a real couple. For how long? 6 months at most. After that, we claim incompatibility and separate. Lucy remained silent for a few minutes, processing the proposal. It was risky, but what alternative did she really have? Continue sleeping on park benches, searching for food in rubbish bins, fleeing from dangerous people in the early hours. "I have conditions," she finally said. "What are they?" "No physical intimacy, separate rooms. And when this is over, you help me with something I need to resolve." "What kind of thing?" Lucy hesitated. Could she trust this man? She had trusted people before, and it had gone very, very wrong. "I need to clear my name. I was unjustly accused of something I didn't do, and that destroyed my career and my life." Daniel observed her intently. There was a deep pain in her eyes, a wound that had not yet healed. "I accept your conditions," he said. "When do you want to start?" "Not now," Lucy quickly replied. "I need time to think." "How much time?" 2 days. Daniel took a card from his pocket and handed it to her. "This is my home address. If you decide to accept, present yourself there on Thursday at 7 p.m. If you don't show up, I'll understand you don't want to do it." Lucy took the card. The paper was thick, expensive, with embossed gold lettering. The address was in Belgravia, 1 of the city's most exclusive areas. 3, 4, 5. "And what if I steal something from your house?" she asked, testing him. "Then I'll have chosen the wrong person," Daniel replied with a half smile. "But I don't think you will." He turned to leave but stopped and looked back. "Lucy, that's your name, isn't it?" She nodded, surprised he knew. "Regardless of your decision about my proposal, there's a shelter 2 blocks from here that serves dinner until 8 p.m. The food is good, and the people are decent." And with that, Daniel walked away, leaving Lucy alone with the card in her hand and her head full of confused thoughts. That night, lying on a bench in the city square, using her bag as a pillow, Lucy couldn't sleep. Daniel's proposal echoed in her mind. It was an opportunity to escape that terrible situation, but it also seemed too good to be true. How many times in life does someone appear out of nowhere, offering a magical solution? She knew fairy tales well. She had taught children's literature for years, and knew that in real life, things didn't work as they did in books. There was always a price to pay, always a hidden trap. But £500,000, British pounds, was enough money to properly investigate what had happened at the university, to hire a competent solicitor, to have the resources to fight against the lies that destroyed her career, to prove that she had never committed plagiarism. The chill of dawn made her shrink further into her worn coat. In 2 days, she would be making a decision that could completely change the course of her life. On Thursday at 7 p.m. sharp, Lucy stood in front of the gate of Daniel's mansion. She had spent the previous 2 days obsessively thinking about the proposal, weighing pros and cons until her head ached. The house was even more imposing than she had imagined. 3 floors, an immaculate garden, an electric gate with an intercom. It was the kind of place she never imagined she would set foot in. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please hit the like button and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. That helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Continuing. She pressed the intercom button with a trembling hand. "Good evening," a feminine voice said from the other side. "Good evening. I'm Lucy. Daniel invited me to come today." "One moment, please." A few seconds later, the gate opened automatically. Lucy walked through the garden towards the main door, feeling completely out of place. Her clean clothes she had managed to wash at the shelter Daniel mentioned were still old and worn. The door opened before she even rang the bell. A middle-aged woman, well-dressed and with a serious expression, greeted her. "Good evening. I'm Mrs. Davies, the Roberts family's housekeeper. Mr. Daniel is waiting for you in the drawing room." Lucy followed Mrs. Davies through a foyer that seemed larger than any flat she had ever lived in. Expensive paintings adorned the walls, and a crystal chandelier hung from the high ceiling. Daniel was sitting in a leather armchair, reading some papers. When he saw her enter, he immediately stood up. "Lucy, I'm glad you came." "I said I would," she replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Mrs. Davies, could you leave us, please?" The housekeeper nodded and withdrew, but not before casting an appraising glance at Lucy. "Sit down," Daniel said, gesturing towards the sofa. "Would you like anything? Water? Coffee? Tea?" "I'm fine, thank you." Lucy sat on the edge of the sofa, back straight, hands clasped in her lap. Daniel returned to his armchair. "I imagine you've given my proposal a lot of thought." "I have, and I have a few more questions." "Of course, ask anything you like. Does your family know the marriage will be fake?" "No, and they can't know. My grandfather is very traditional, and if he discovers it's a sham, he won't just disinherit me. He might even sue me for fraud. And your friends, your employees, they'll think it was a whirlwind romance? It happens. People will gossip for a few weeks, then they'll forget. And about me, don't you want to know who I really am before bringing me into your house?" Daniel leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I know you were a university lecturer. I know something happened that made you lose your job. I know you don't have family here in London, because if you did, you wouldn't be living on the streets. And I know you're a person of integrity, even in a desperate situation. How do you know all that?" "I observed you. I spoke to some people who work in the square area. I didn't hire a private detective or anything so invasive, if that's what you're thinking." Lucy was impressed. He had truly taken the trouble to minimally investigate her. "And if I accept and then change my mind midway through the process? Then we talk and find a solution." I don't want anyone to feel trapped in this agreement. And the money? When would I receive it? Half now? Half when we divorce? Lucy took a deep breath. It was a fair proposal, considering the circumstances. I accept, she finally said. Daniel smiled the first time since they met. Excellent. We'll need to get married as quickly as possible. I thought we could have a civil ceremony at the registry office 6/7 on Monday if you agree. So fast. The longer we wait, the greater the risk that my grandfather will start asking questions. He's already suspicious because he's never seen me with a serious girlfriend. I understand. And where would I stay until the ceremony? Here, if you like. Or I can pay for a hotel. Lucy looked around the luxurious drawing room. The prospect of sleeping in a real bed for the first time in months was tempting, but it also made her nervous. I think a hotel would be better, at least until we're officially married. No problem. Mrs. Davies can take you to a good place. Daniel got up and went to a desk in the corner of the room. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick envelope. Here's the first half of the payment, he said, handing the envelope to her. £250,000, British pounds. Lucy took the envelope with trembling hands. She had never had so much money in her life. It was surreal. Thank you, she whispered. There's one more thing we need to discuss, Daniel said, sitting back down. Tomorrow morning, we'll need to buy some clothes for you, for social events, and for meeting my family. Lucy looked at her own clothes and blushed. Of course, she would need a suitable wardrobe to play the part of a wealthy businessman's wife. I'll pay, Daniel added quickly, noticing her discomfort. It's part of the agreement. All right. And we'll also need to talk about our story, how we met, how long we've been together, that sort of thing. We need to be aligned for when people ask, have you thought of a version? Some ideas. How about we say we met in a bookshop? You were buying a classic literature book. We started talking about English authors, and it was love at first sight. Lucy almost smiled. It was a plausible story, and close to the truth about who she really was. It could work. Excellent. Mrs. Davies will take you to the hotel now. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., I'll pick you up, and we'll go shopping. They stood up at the same time. For a moment, they stood facing each other, unsure how to say goodbye. They were no longer strangers, but they weren't intimate either. Lucy, Daniel said. I know this is strange, and a bit mad, but thank you for agreeing to help me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, she replied. Mrs. Davies appeared at the door as if she had been waiting for the right moment. I'm ready to take the young lady to the hotel, she announced. In the car, on the way to the hotel, Lucy looked out the window at the illuminated streets of London passing by. 24 hours ago, she was sleeping on a bench in the city square. Now, she was in the leather seat of an expensive car, with £250,000, British pounds, in a new bag. Daniel had insisted on buying her. Life could change very quickly. She knew that better than anyone. The hotel Mrs. Davies took her to was discreet but elegant. The room had a king-size bed, a private bathroom with a tub, and a partial view of Hyde Park. Lucy stood in the middle of the room for a few minutes, just looking around. Then she went to the bathroom, turned on the taps of the tub, and finally let the tears flow. Tears of relief, of gratitude, of fear, of hope. All the feelings she had suppressed for the past months surfaced all at once. She stayed in the tub for over an hour, letting the warm water relax muscles that had been tense for too long. When she finally got out, she looked in the mirror and saw a woman she didn't completely recognize. Her hair was still damaged and disheveled. Her skin was dry and marked by the sun and cold, but there was something different in her eyes, a spark of hope she hadn't seen in a long time. The next morning, Daniel appeared promptly at 9 a.m. Lucy was waiting in the hotel lobby, wearing the same clothes as the day before, but at least clean and ironed. Good morning, he greeted her. Did you sleep well? Better than in months, she replied honestly. In the car on the way to the shopping center, Daniel explained the plan for the day. We'll go to an upscale shopping center first. There are several good shops there where we can find everything you need. Afterwards, we'll go to a hair salon my secretary recommended. I don't want anything too extravagant, Lucy said. I'm not comfortable with excess. I understand. We'll take it easy, and you choose what makes you feel good. The first stop was at a designer women's clothing store. Lucy felt intimidated by the prices and the attention of the sales assistants, but Daniel was patient and encouraged her to try on several options. This dress looks lovely on you, he commented, when she emerged from the changing room wearing a navy blue midi dress. Lucy looked in the mirror and had to agree. The quality fabric and perfect cut completely transformed her appearance. It's very expensive, she murmured, looking at the tag. Don't worry about it. Choose what you like. They spent 3 hours at the shopping center, buying dresses, blouses, trousers, shoes, accessories, and even suitable lingerie. Danielle always maintained a respectful demeanor, offering opinions when she asked, but leaving the final decisions in her hands. At the hair salon, the transformation was even more dramatic. The stylist cut and treated her hair, revealing a brilliant chestnut color she had forgotten she had. The manicurist and pedicurist made her nails look completely different, and the subtle makeup enhanced her features in a way she hadn't seen in years. When she looked in the mirror at the end of the day, Lucy could barely recognize her own reflection. The woman looking back at her was elegant, sophisticated, beautiful. She was who she used to be before everything fell apart. Stunning, Daniel said when she emerged from the salon. You look beautiful, Lucy. Lucy blushed. It had been a long time since anyone had called her beautiful. Thank you, and thank you for all this. She gestured towards the shopping bags in the car. It's the least I can do. After all, you're helping me with a very serious problem. Back at the hotel, Daniel casually mentioned, tomorrow night we're having dinner at my grandfather's house. He wants to meet you. Lucy felt her stomach churn. I thought it would be more gradual. Unfortunately, we don't have much time. He called this morning saying he wants to meet my fiancée as soon as possible. And if he doesn't like me, he will. You're intelligent, educated. You have an interesting story. You just need to relax and be yourself. And if he finds out it's all a lie? Daniel stopped the car at the traffic lights and looked at her. He won't. Unless you tell him. Of course I won't tell him. Then everything's fine. My grandfather is a straightforward man, despite all his money. He's more impressed by character than social status. At the hotel, Lucy went up to her room, carrying all the shopping bags. She hung the new clothes carefully in the wardrobe and arranged the shoes in rows. It was like assembling a wardrobe for a character she was going to play, because that's what she was doing, wasn't she? Playing a role, the character of the wealthy businessman's loving fiancée. A woman who had no dark secrets in her past, who hadn't lost everything that mattered, who hadn't spent months living on the streets. She lay down on the comfortable bed and closed her eyes, trying to mentally prepare for what was to come. Dinner at Daniel's grandfather's house was scheduled for 7:30 p.m. the next day. Lucy spent the entire day nervous, changing clothes several times until she settled on the navy blue dress Daniel had praised in the shop. When he arrived to pick her up, he was visibly nervous too. My grandfather is a bit intense, he explained in the car. He likes to ask direct questions and observes everything very carefully. What kind of questions? About your family, your background, your plans for the future, that sort of thing. And what do I say about my family? The truth, if possible. It's always easier to remember the truth than lies. Lucy took a deep breath. The truth about her family was complicated, but not impossible to explain. Lord Robert's house was even larger and more imposing than his grandson's. It was in Kensington, 1-4, and had a spectacular view of the city, 3. A butler greeted them at the entrance and led them to a formal dining room with a table that could easily accommodate 12 people. Lord Robert Roberts was a 73-year-old man, with well-cut white hair, piercing blue eyes like his grandson's, and a posture that exuded authority even while seated. He wore an impeccable dark suit and a maroon tie. Grandfather, this is Lucy, Daniel said, with an arm lightly resting on her back. Lucy, the grandfather repeated, standing up and walking towards them. A pleasure to meet you, my dear. Daniel has spoken highly of you. The pleasure is mine, Lord Robert, Lucy replied, accepting his outstretched hand. Please, call me Robert. Excessive formality makes me uncomfortable. During dinner, served by 2 silent staff, Robert bombarded Lucy with questions. Where she was born, where she had studied, what books she liked to read, what were her professional plans. Daniel told me you were a university lecturer, Robert commented as he cut his salmon. It's a very noble profession. Why did you stop teaching? Lucy felt her throat dry. It was the question she feared most. I had some, issues in my last job, she replied carefully. I decided to take some time to rethink my career. What kind of issues? Grandfather, Daniel interjected. You don't need to interrogate Lucy as if she were giving testimony. It's all right, Lucy said, lightly touching Daniel's arm in a gesture that seemed natural. I don't mind talking about it. She looked directly into Robert's eyes. I was unjustly accused of academic plagiarism. Someone falsified evidence to harm me, and I couldn't prove my innocence in time to save my career. That's terrible, Robert said. And for the first time that evening, his expression softened. Injustice is one of the things that most infuriates me in this world. That's why I'm focused on clearing my name and proving the truth, Lucy continued, even if it takes years. And Daniel is helping you with that? Lucy looked at Daniel, who nodded almost imperceptibly. He's offering me support, she said, both emotional and practical. Excellent. That's how it should be. Partners should be there for each other in difficult times. The rest of the dinner proceeded more calmly. Robert told stories about building the family business. Daniel contributed some amusing anecdotes, and Lucy gradually managed to relax. Lucy, Robert said as they were having coffee at the end of the meal, you seem like a very principled young woman. Daniel is to be congratulated on his choice. Thank you, Robert. And when do you plan to marry? Lucy almost choked on her coffee. Well, Daniel began. Soon, Lucy interrupted, surprising them both. We see no reason to wait long when we know it's what we want. Robert smiled broadly. Excellent. Young people who know what they want and don't beat around the bush. I like that. In the car, on the way back to the hotel, Daniel was clearly relieved. You performed perfectly, he said. My grandfather really liked you. How do you know? By the way he spoke. And he never praises the women I introduce him to. Never. You introduce him to many women? Some, over the years, but he always found some flaw. He'd say they were too interested, or too frivolous, or too fake. And I'm none of that? Daniel stopped at the traffic lights and looked at her intently. You're the most genuine person I've met in a long time. Lucy felt something strange stir in her chest, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. Daniel, yes. Why did you really choose me? And don't tell me it was just because I didn't want your money. He was silent for a moment, considering his answer. Because when I saw you in that square for the first time in years, I felt I had found someone real. Someone who understood what it was like to lose everything and have to rebuild your life from scratch. You've lost everything in a way, but that's a conversation for another day. Lucy wanted to press, but something in his expression made her change her mind. Everyone had a right to their secrets. On Monday morning, they married at the registry office 6-7. It was a simple ceremony, with only the mandatory witnesses. Lucy wore a discreet white dress they had bought specifically for the occasion, and Daniel was impeccable in a dark gray suit. When the officer asked if they accepted each other as husband and wife, both answered, I do, in firm voices, but avoided looking into each other's eyes. The kiss that sealed the union was quick and chaste, barely a brush of lips. Leaving the registry office as husband and wife, Lucy felt strange. She was officially Mrs. Lucy Roberts now, at least temporarily. How do you feel? Daniel asked as they got into the car. Strange, she replied honestly. And you? Relieved. At least one part of the problem is solved. What's the next step? You move into the house today. Tomorrow, we'll announce our marriage to the rest of the family and my friends. What will that be like? A lunch at my house. Nothing too formal. My cousin Penelope will be there. Some cousins, my secretary, some business partners. The cousin who would lose the inheritance if you didn't get married? The very same. Be prepared because she won't be happy with the news. That afternoon, Lucy definitively moved into Daniel's mansion. Mrs. Davies, the housekeeper, welcomed her cordially but reservedly, showing her the room that would be hers for the next few months. It was a spacious suite on the second floor, with a private bathroom, a walk-in closet, and a small sitting area with armchairs and a table. The windows overlooked the back garden, and the decor was elegant, but not ostentatious. Mr. Daniel's room is at the end of the corridor, Mrs. Davies explained. If you need anything during the night, you can call me. My room is on the first floor. Thank you, Mrs. Davies. And I apologize if all this is a bit confusing. I know the situation is unusual. The housekeeper studied her for a moment. It's not my place to judge Mr. Daniel's decisions, she finally said. But I can say he seems happier since he met you. Really? Yes. He's been very stressed lately, worried about this inheritance matter. Now he's calmer. Lucy arranged her new clothes in the wardrobe, organized her few personal items, and sat in the armchair by the window. From there, she could see Daniel by the swimming pool area, talking on the phone and gesticulating quite a bit. He seemed to be discussing some professional matter. It was strange to observe him in his own home, in his natural environment. He seemed different there, more relaxed and confident. In the square, when he approached her, there had been a certain desperation in his demeanor. Now, walking around the garden of his mansion, he was clearly a successful man, in control of his life, or at least, so it seemed from the outside. During dinner, which they shared in the house's smaller, more intimate dining room, Daniel explained some details about the domestic routine. Breakfast is served at 7:30. Mrs. Davies always prepares varied options. Lunch is at 12:30 and dinner at 8 p.m. If you want to eat at other times, just let us know. And weekends? I usually work Saturday mornings, but afternoons and Sundays I'm free. Sometimes I have social engagements, company events, that sort of thing. And now that we're married, I'll have to accompany you to those events? To some, yes, but nothing too frequent. They ate in relative silence for a few minutes, still getting used to the new dynamic between them. They were no longer strangers, but they weren't exactly intimate either. "May I ask a question?" Lucy finally said. "Of course. Why did your grandfather put that condition in his will? About having to get married?" Daniel sighed and put his fork down on the plate. "My grandfather is a very traditional man. He married at 22 and was with my grandmother until she passed away 48 years later. For him, marriage and family are the foundation of a stable and successful life. And your parents? They passed away when I was 15. Car accident. My grandfather raised me ever since. I'm so sorry. Thank you. It was a long time ago, but it's still difficult to talk about." Lucy understood perfectly. She, too, had lost important people and knew that some wounds never fully healed. "That's why you never married before, because you lost your parents young and you're afraid of getting attached to people?" Daniel looked at her, surprised. "That's a very insightful observation. I used to be a psychologist before becoming a literature lecturer. I did 2 degrees. I didn't know that. Why did you change fields?" "Because I found I preferred analyzing fictional characters to real people. Characters don't lie about who they are, but real people lie all the time to others and to themselves." Daniel looked thoughtful. "And have you ever lied to yourself?" Lucy hesitated. It was a deeper question than it seemed. "I think we all lie to ourselves from time to time. It's a way of surviving. What do you lie to yourself about? About being fine on my own? About not needing anyone? About having completely moved past what happened to me at university?" It was more honesty than she had intended to share, but something in the way Daniel listened made her feel safe enough to open up. "And me? What do you think I lie to myself about?" Lucy observed him intently, his blue eyes, his upright but slightly tense posture, the way his hands moved restlessly when he was thinking. "About being satisfied with your life? About professional success being enough to make you happy? About not feeling lonely in this house that's too big for one person?" It was Daniel's turn to look surprised. "How do you know I feel lonely?" "By the way you look at things when you think no one is paying attention. It's the same look I had when I still lived alone in my flat before everything fell apart." They were silent for a few minutes, absorbing the unexpected revelations they had shared. "Lucy," Daniel said finally, "may I ask a personal question?" "You may. What really happened at university? Who was it that harmed you, and why?" Lucy felt her chest tighten. It was a topic she avoided thinking about, but which never fully left her mind. There was an older professor in the department, Professor Alistair Finch. He was interested in me, but I always made it clear I wasn't. When I started being considered for a permanent position he also wanted for a protégé of his, he decided to sabotage me. How? He falsified documents, making it appear I had copied parts of my doctoral thesis from other authors. He planted evidence on my computer, bribed people to testify against me. When the investigation began, you couldn't prove your innocence? And the university didn't question the evidence? They questioned it. But Alistair was very respected and influential. He had friends in important positions. I was just a young lecturer without many political connections. What happened in the end? I was dismissed. My name was publicly tarnished. Other universities didn't want to hire me. I lost my flat because I could no longer pay the rent. My friends drifted away because they didn't know whether to believe me or the accusations. Lucy felt tears begin to form, but she held them back. In a few months, I lost everything. Career, home, friends, reputation. When the money ran out, I ended up on the streets. And you never tried to fight the accusations? I tried. I hired a solicitor with the little money I had, but we couldn't find enough evidence to overturn the situation. The solicitor told me it would be better to accept a settlement and move on, perhaps change cities and start a new career. But you didn't accept it. No, because accepting would mean admitting I did something wrong, and I didn't. Daniel got up and walked to the window, standing with his back to her for a few moments. Lucy, he said, without turning around, if you could have a second chance to prove your innocence, would you take it? Of course, but I don't know how that would be possible now. Daniel turned to look at her. And what if I told you I know people who could help? Private investigators, solicitors specializing in academic law, people with resources to uncover the truth. Lucy felt her heart race. Why would you do that? Our agreement didn't include you spending money trying to clear my name. Because it's the right thing to do. And why? Because I like you, Lucy, as a person, as a friend, and friends help each other. She was silent, processing what he had said. It was a generous offer, but also dangerous. It meant opening herself up again, reliving all the pain and humiliation of the past. I need to think about it, she finally said. Of course, there's no hurry. The offer will still stand. The next morning, Lucy woke up in her new bed, in her new room, in her new temporary life. For the first time in months, she had slept through the entire night without waking with a start. The feeling of security was almost strange after so long. She went down for breakfast and found Daniel already sitting at the table, reading the newspaper and drinking coffee. He wore a gray suit and looked ready for another day of work. "Good morning," she greeted him, sitting in the opposite chair. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" "Very well, thank you." Mrs. Davies appeared with a tray of fresh fruit, pastries, cheeses, and juices. "Mrs. Roberts," the housekeeper said, "from today on, you can tell me your preferences for meals. I like to know what the people of the house enjoy eating." "I'm not very fussy," Lucy replied. "I eat practically anything." "Do you have any allergies? Any dietary restrictions?" "No, none." After Mrs. Davies withdrew, Daniel explained the day's schedule. "Lunch with my family is at 12:30. It will be here at home. My secretary is handling all the preparations. How many people will come?" 8. Counting you and me, my cousin Penelope and her husband, 2 cousins from my mother's side, my secretary Gillian, and 2 business partners. "The cousin who would lose the inheritance if you didn't marry?" "That's right. Be prepared because she won't be happy with the news." Daniel finished his coffee and stood up. "I need to go to work now, but I'll be back before lunch. If you need anything, Mrs. Davies knows where to find me." After he left, Lucy found herself alone in the mansion for the first time. It was a strange feeling to be in such a large and luxurious place. She decided to explore the house a bit. The library on the second floor particularly impressed her. The walls were covered with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, crammed with books of all kinds: world literature, classics, business books, biographies, even some contemporary novels. It was clearly the library of someone who truly read, not just for decoration. She took a copy of Wuthering Heights 8 from the shelf and sat in an armchair by the window. It had been a long time since she had read purely for pleasure, without the pressure of preparing classes or academic research. Mrs. Davies found her there a few hours later. "Mrs. Roberts, I apologize for the interruption, but I need to confirm some details about lunch." "Of course. Tell me, does the madam wish me to prepare any special dish, or may I proceed with the menu I have already planned?" "What you've planned is perfect. Don't worry about me." Mrs. Davies hesitated for a moment before speaking. "May I make a personal observation?" "Of course. It's good to see Mr. Daniel with someone who appreciates books." His ex-girlfriend never entered the library. She used to say reading gave her a headache. He had had a serious girlfriend for almost 2 years, Fiona. A pretty girl, but very, how to say it, materialistic. Lucy felt curious, but didn't want to seem nosy by asking too many questions. What happened between them? She broke up with him when she discovered he would have to marry before 35 to receive the inheritance. She said she didn't want pressure to marry. It was ironic, Lucy thought. The ex-girlfriend didn't want to marry Daniel, and now he was married to a complete stranger. At 12:15, Daniel arrived home and went straight to his room to change. When he came down, he wore black dress trousers and a white shirt, a more casual, but still elegant, look. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Nervous," Lucy admitted. "What if they don't like me?" "They'll like you. And even if they don't, it doesn't matter. The only one who needs to approve our marriage is my grandfather, and he already has." The guests began to arrive at 12:30 sharp. First came Gillian, Daniel's secretary, a woman in her 40s with a professional appearance and a kind smile, and the 2 business partners, middle-aged men who greeted Lucy politely but without much interest. Then came Daniel's cousins, Charles and George, both around 40, with their respective wives. They seemed friendly people and treated Lucy cordially. Penelope arrived last, accompanied by her husband. She was a tall blonde woman, well-dressed, with an expression Lucy immediately identified as hostile. She would be around 40 and wore expensive jewelry that sparkled every time she gestured. "So, you're the famous Lucy," Penelope said, when Daniel introduced them. What a wonderful surprise to discover my cousin got married without telling anyone in the family. Her tone of voice made it clear that she didn't consider the surprise wonderful at all. Pleasure to meet you, Penelope, Lucy replied, maintaining her composure. The pleasure is mine. I'm very curious to meet the woman who managed to get my cousin to the altar in less than a month of dating. Penelope, Daniel interjected. Let's have lunch. Mrs. Davies prepared a special menu. During lunch, Penelope bombarded Lucy with seemingly innocent questions, but clearly designed to unsettle her or expose inconsistencies in her story. And where exactly did you meet? Penelope asked as she cut her salmon. In a bookshop in central London, Lucy replied calmly. Daniel was looking for a business administration book, and I was buying a copy of Wuthering Heights to reread. How interesting a coincidence. Daniel detests Wuthering Heights. He always said it's a boring, old-fashioned book. Lucy looked at Daniel, who seemed a little uncomfortable. People can change their minds about literature, she said, especially when they find someone who can show them a different perspective on the classics. It's true, Daniel quickly agreed. Lucy made me see aspects of the book I had never noticed before. How romantic, Penelope commented with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And I heard you were a university lecturer. At which university did you work? Lucy felt her stomach contract but kept her voice firm. At University College London 9, 10, 11, in the English department. Interesting. And why did you leave there, Penelope? Daniel said in a warning tone. I don't think it's appropriate to interrogate Lucy as if she were giving testimony. It's quite all right, Lucy said, lightly touching Daniel's arm. I had some academic disagreements with colleagues and decided it was time to seek new horizons. Academic disagreements? Penelope repeated. How so? Differences of opinion on teaching methodology and research direction. Nothing too dramatic. It was technically true, though a very softened version of the facts. Gillian, the secretary, tried to change the subject. Daniel told me you're very cultured, Lucy. It must be wonderful to have someone he can talk to about books and art. Yes, it is, Lucy agreed, grateful for the intervention. Daniel has an impressive library. I was reading some books from it this morning. What kind of literature do you enjoy most? Asked Charles, one of the cousins. Classic English literature, mainly, but I also like contemporary authors. Recently, I've become interested in biographies of writers. The conversation flowed more naturally after that, with discussions about books, travel, and plans for the future. Penelope continued to cast suspicious glances at Lucy, but stopped with the direct questioning. After all the guests had left, Daniel and Lucy sat in the drawing room, both clearly exhausted. How do you think it went? He asked. Your cousin hates me, Lucy replied directly. Penelope distrusts everyone. Don't take it personally. She clearly suspects there's something wrong with our marriage, but she can't prove anything. And even if she could, what would she do? Tell my grandfather? He's already approved us. Daniel, I need to ask you something. What? Do you really detest Wuthering Heights? Daniel blushed for the first time since lunch. I do detest it. I think it's one of the most boring books I've ever tried to read. Then why did you say you had changed your mind about it? Because I needed to defend you, and it was the first thing that came to my mind. Lucy felt something warm stir in her chest. It had been a long time since anyone had defended her, even in a small situation like that. Thank you, she said softly. You're welcome. We're a team now, remember? At least for the next few months. That night, Lucy lay in bed, thinking about what had happened during the day. The lunch had been a test, and she felt she had passed, even with Penelope's hostility. But what bothered her most was the growing realization that she was starting to like Daniel as a person. It wasn't just gratitude for what he was doing for her. It was genuine fondness, admiration even. And that was dangerous because when those 6 months ended, they would divorce and go their separate ways. She couldn't allow herself to develop real feelings for a man who was married to her only out of convenience. She needed to maintain emotional distance, be grateful, cordial, fulfill her part of the agreement, but not get emotionally involved. It was easier said than done. The next morning, a Tuesday, Daniel had left early for an important meeting at the company. Lucy was having breakfast alone when Mrs. Davies approached her with a worried expression. Mrs. Roberts, there's a gentleman here who wishes to speak with you. With me? Who? A man who says his name is Alistair. Says he knows you from the university. Lucy felt her blood run cold. Professor Alistair Finch, the man who had destroyed her life. What was he doing here? Where is he? In the reception room. He said it's urgent. Lucy took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. She couldn't show weakness now. Tell him I'll be right down. She quickly went up to her room, changed her dressing gown for more appropriate clothes, and went down to confront the man who had taken everything from her. Professor Alistair Finch stood by the reception room window, looking out at the garden. He was a man in his late 50s, graying hair, distinguished appearance. He wore a suit and tie, as always. When he saw her enter, he turned with a smile she knew well and had always detested. "Lucy, my dear, how are you?" "Different. What do you want, Alistair?" "My, what coldness. Won't you even greet me properly? Just tell me. What did you come here for?" Alistair sat down, uninvited, crossed his legs, and adopted a relaxed posture. "I heard you married a wealthy businessman. Congratulations. I always knew you were clever. How did you know about my marriage?" "Oh, Lucy, London isn't that big. News travels. A whirlwind marriage of an influential businessman to a former university lecturer draws attention." Lucy remained standing, keeping her distance. "You still haven't told me what you came here for." "I came to make a proposal, an offer of peace, so to speak." "What kind of offer?" "I'm willing to publicly admit that the accusations against you were exaggerated. I can even help clear your name academically." Lucy felt her heart quicken, but forced herself to maintain a neutral expression. "In exchange for what?" "A symbolic sum, £50,000 British pounds, to cover some inconveniences I'll have to face to rectify the situation." "Are you trying to blackmail me?" "I prefer to think of this as a business opportunity. You have access to resources now through your husband." £50,000 British pounds is an insignificant amount for a man in his position. Lucy felt rage rise like hot lava. "You destroyed my life, made me lose everything I had, and now you want me to pay you to admit you lied?" "Let's be practical, Lucy. Do you want your name cleared? This is your chance. Otherwise, I can assure you that the doors of academia will remain closed to you forever. Get out of my house. Think carefully about my proposal. You have 48 hours to decide." Alistair stood up and walked towards the door, but stopped before leaving. "Oh, and Lucy, does your husband know about your past, about the accusations? It would be a shame if he discovered he married someone with a questionable reputation." With that, he left, leaving Lucy trembling with rage and fear. She ran up to her room and locked herself inside. Her hands trembled so much she could barely dial Daniel's number on her mobile. "Lucy, what happened? I need to talk to you. It's urgent. I'm in an important meeting. Can it wait until I get home?" "It can't. It's about my past, about the person who harmed me at university." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I'm leaving now. I'll be home in 20 minutes. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please hit the like button and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. That helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Daniel arrived home in 15 minutes, finding Lucy still locked in her room. She opened the door when she heard his voice, and he immediately noticed she was visibly distressed. "What happened?" "Alistair was here. The professor who accused me of plagiarism." Danielle guided her to the armchairs by the window and sat opposite her. "Tell me everything from the beginning." Lucy recounted the conversation, every word, every veiled threat. Daniel listened in silence, but she could see the anger growing in his eyes. "He's trying to blackmail you," Daniel said when she finished. "I know, but what if he carries out his threats? What if he tells your grandfather about the accusations? Even if they're false, it could be enough to ruin everything." "It won't ruin anything. My grandfather isn't the type of person to judge someone without knowing the facts. But Alistair can invent convincing evidence. He's done it before." Daniel was silent for a moment, thinking. "Lucy, do you trust me?" "Yes, I think so." "Then let me handle this. I have resources and contacts who can help deal with men like that." "What are you going to do?" "First, I'm going to hire a private investigator, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, to uncover everything possible about Alistair's recent activities. If he's trying to blackmail you now, he's probably done it to other people. And then we're going to expose the truth in the right way, with solid evidence that can't be questioned." Lucy felt a mix of relief and apprehension. "This is going to cost a lot of money. Don't worry about the money. Worry about giving me all the information you have about that man and about what he did to you at university." "Why are you doing this?" "It goes far beyond our original agreement." Daniel stood up and walked to the window, standing with his back to her. "Because you don't deserve to live in fear of someone who unjustly harmed you, and because I care about what happens to you." There was something in his voice that made Lucy feel he wasn't just speaking as a helpful friend. "Daniel, no, don't say anything now," he interrupted her, still with his back turned. "Let's focus on resolving this situation first. We'll talk about everything else later." That afternoon, Daniel cancelled all his engagements and dedicated himself to making calls and arranging meetings with people who could help. In a few hours, he had hired one of London's best private investigators and arranged a consultation with a solicitor specializing in academic law. "How did you manage to organize all this so quickly?" Lucy asked, impressed. "When you have resources and know who to talk to, doors open," he replied. "Tomorrow morning, we're meeting with the investigator. He'll need every detail you remember about what happened. And if Alistair discovers we're investigating him, even better. Men like him become careless when they're nervous." That night, during dinner, Daniel told Lucy about his own experience with blackmail and threats. "When I was younger and gradually taking over my grandfather's company, several people tried to extort me, dissatisfied former employees, competitors, even some distant relatives. I learned that the only way to deal with such people is to confront them head-on." And did it always work? Blackmailers are cowards by nature. When they realize you won't be intimidated, they usually back down. But what if Alistair is different? Then we'll destroy his credibility once and for all, legally, but definitively. The determination in Daniel's voice was comforting, but Lucy still felt a knot in her stomach. She had known Alistair for years and knew he was cunning and malicious. "May I ask you a personal question?" she said, after a moment. "Of course. Why did you never marry before? I mean, for real, not for the inheritance." Daniel hesitated, fiddling with his napkin. "Because I never found someone who made me feel it was worth taking the risk." "What risk?" "The risk of opening my heart to someone and then losing that person, as happened with my parents." Lucy understood. It was the same reason she had stayed away from serious relationships for years. "And now you're taking that risk with me?" Daniel looked into her eyes for the first time in the conversation. "I think I've already started taking it, whether I want to or not." Lucy felt her heart quicken. There was an intensity in his gaze that made her realize the dynamic between them had changed. They were no longer just two strangers fulfilling a business agreement. "Daniel, I know. It's complicated. It wasn't what we planned. We can't get emotionally involved. When all this is over, we'll decide what we want to do with what's happening between us." Lucy stayed up late that night, thinking about the conversation. She was in uncharted territory. She had married Daniel to solve a practical problem for him and to restart her own life. She hadn't planned on getting emotionally involved, but it was too late. She was already involved. The next morning, Daniel and Lucy met the private investigator in a discreet cafe in central London. Michael Sterling was a 50-year-old former police officer 12, with an ordinary appearance that made him blend into any crowd. "I need all the details about this professor," Michael said, opening a notepad. "Full name, where he works now, what his habits are, who his friends and contacts are." Lucy provided all the information she remembered about Alistair. Michael took meticulous notes and occasionally asked specific questions. And about the time of the accusation, who else was involved in the process? There was an investigation committee formed by 5 professors. The coordinator was a close friend of Alistair's. Names. Lucy provided the names and all the circumstances she could recall. Michael seemed satisfied with the volume of information. "I'll start by investigating Alistair's current activities," he explained. "If he's trying to blackmail you, it's probably not the first time. Men like that have patterns of behavior." "How long will it take?" Daniel asked. "For preliminary information, a week. To build a solid case, perhaps a month. And if he carries out his threats before that, then we'll be prepared to retaliate immediately." Upon leaving the meeting, Daniel seemed confident, but Lucy was still uneasy. "What if we ultimately find we don't have enough evidence to prove he falsified the accusations? Then at least we'll have enough information to neutralize any future blackmail attempts." "That's not enough for me," Lucy said firmly. "I want the truth to be known. I want my name to be completely cleared." Daniel stopped walking and looked at her. "And you will get it, I promise you." There was a conviction in his voice that made Lucy believe, for the first time in months, that it might be possible to regain her reputation and her career. During the rest of the week, life in the mansion followed a relatively normal routine. Daniel left for work in the morning and returned in the late afternoon. Lucy spent her days reading in the library, chatting with Mrs. Davies, and trying not to obsessively think about the ongoing investigation. On the weekend, they received an unexpected invitation. "My grandfather wants to invite us to a special dinner on Saturday night," Daniel announced on Friday during breakfast. "There will be more family members, some close friends of his. It's quite formal. He wants to introduce you to his social circle. It's a kind of official approval." Lucy felt her stomach churn. The more people who knew their invented story, the greater the risk that someone would discover inconsistencies. It'll be all right, Daniel reassured her, as if reading her thoughts. They're educated people. They'll ask polite questions and accept polite answers. On Saturday night, Lucy dressed carefully for dinner. She chose an elegant but discreet dark blue dress, comfortable low shoes, and minimal jewelry. She wanted to make a good impression without seeming like she was trying too hard. Lord Robert's house was full of guests when they arrived. About 20 people circulated in the drawing room with drinks in hand, chatting in small groups. Lucy recognized some faces from the previous lunch, but most were strangers. Robert greeted them warmly. "Lucy, my dear, so good to see you again. You're radiant." "Thank you, Robert. Your house is beautiful. Come, I want to introduce you to some special people." In the next 2 hours, Lucy was introduced to businessmen, doctors, solicitors, retired professors, and their respective wives. The conversations were superficial but pleasant, and she gradually managed to relax. It was during dinner that the situation became complicated. She was seated between Daniel and an elegant woman in her 60s named Margaret, who casually mentioned, "Lucy, I heard you were a lecturer at University College London. What a coincidence. My daughter-in-law also studied English there. Perhaps you know each other." "It's possible," Lucy replied carefully. "When did she graduate?" "About 3 years ago. Her name is Laura Davies. She always speaks very highly of her professors." Lucy almost choked on her wine. Laura Davies had been one of her brightest students and also one of the first to abandon her when the plagiarism accusations arose. "Laura, yes, I remember her," Lucy said, trying to keep her voice neutral. "How wonderful. I'll tell her I met you. I'm sure she'll be happy to know you're doing well." Lucy exchanged a worried glance with Daniel. If Laura knew she had married a wealthy businessman so soon after living on the streets, she would certainly ask questions. And Laura knew all the details about the accusations at the university. "Actually," Lucy said quickly, "I prefer not to mix my current life with my professional past. I'm in a transitional phase, you see." "Of course, dear, I understand perfectly." But Lucy noticed that Margaret remained curious about her reaction, one more person who would possibly leave there with unanswered questions. After dinner, as they drove home, Daniel asked, "Who is Laura Davies?" Lucy sighed, "A former student, one of those who abandoned me when the accusations started. Do you think she could cause problems?" "If she finds out about our marriage and tells other people at the university, yes, it could be problematic. We'll deal with it if it happens. There's no point in worrying prematurely." But Lucy was already worrying. She felt as if she were walking through a minefield, where any misstep could blow up her entire new life. On Monday, Michael Sterling called with the first information about Alistair. "Can I come over this afternoon?" he asked. "I have some interesting things to show you." Daniel cancelled a meeting to be present when the investigator arrived. Michael brought a folder full of documents and photographs. "Our professor friend has been very busy," he began, spreading papers over the drawing room table. "I discovered he pulled the same stunt on at least 2 other people in the last 3 years." "How so?" Lucy asked. "A lecturer from the University of Bristol 9 and a researcher from the University of Cambridge 9. Both were accused of plagiarism under very similar circumstances to yours. And in both cases, Alistair was involved in the investigation committees." Daniel leaned in to examine the documents. "And what happened to those other victims?" "The lecturer from the University of Bristol, Dr. Eleanor Green, managed to prove her innocence after 2 years of legal struggle, but lost the permanent position she was vying for. The researcher from Cambridge, Dr. Richard Thompson, changed fields completely and now works for a private company." "This proves there's a pattern," Lucy said, feeling a mix of relief and anger. "Exactly. But there's more. Alistair has a son who is doing his PhD at a prestigious university in London. The tuition fees are expensive, and from the financial documents I managed to access, his salary as a professor wouldn't be enough to cover those costs." "Is someone paying him to sabotage other professors?" Daniel asked. "It's a possibility. Or is he using blackmail to get extra money? I need to investigate further to be sure." Michael showed some photographs of Alistair entering and leaving expensive buildings, dining in sophisticated restaurants, driving a car that cost much more than he could afford on his salary. "His lifestyle doesn't match his official income," the investigator observed. "That's always a red flag. What do we do now?" Lucy asked. "Now we're going to talk to the other victims. If we can get them to cooperate, we can build a much stronger case." In the following days, Michael managed to contact Dr. Green and Dr. Thompson. Both were interested in cooperating when they learned there were other victims. Dr. Eleanor Green agreed to meet Lucy at a cafe in London at the end of the week. I could never prove it, but I always knew Alistair had some personal interest in harming me, Eleanor commented during the meeting. He wanted the position of postgraduate program coordinator that I was contending for. And did you get the position after proving your innocence? No. The position went to one of his protégés. I left the university entirely and started working in a private school. Do you still have documents from your case? I have everything saved. I could never bring myself to get rid of the papers, hoping that one day they might be useful for something. Lucy felt less alone for the first time in months. There were other people who understood exactly what she had been through. Dr. Richard Thompson shared an even more disturbing story during a video conference. Alistair sought me out after my process ended, Richard recounted. He said he could help me clear my name in exchange for a favor. He wanted me to falsify data from research that would benefit a company that was paying him bribes. And you did it? Lucy asked. Of course not, but the threat was clear. If I didn't cooperate, he would ensure I never worked at any university in the country again. Daniel participated in all these conversations, taking notes and asking insightful questions. Lucy was impressed with his ability to quickly grasp the nuances of the situation. We're dealing with something much more serious than individual blackmail, he observed after the conversation with Richard. This is systemic corruption, Michael Sterling agreed. And men like Alistair rarely work alone. There's probably a network of people involved. What does this mean for me? Lucy asked. It means that when we expose this situation, you won't just be exonerated, you'll be seen as one of the first victims of a much larger scheme. It was more than Lucy had dared to hope for, not just to clear her name, but to be publicly recognized as a victim of injustice. But it also meant the risks were greater. If Alistair was part of a corruption network, he had resources and connections that could make him more dangerous when he felt threatened. On Thursday of the second week after Alistair's visit, he appeared again at Daniel's mansion. This time, he wasn't politely announced by Mrs. Davies. He simply appeared at the door when Lucy was alone at home. "Time's up, Lucy," he said as soon as she opened the door. "I hope you've thought about my proposal." "Yes, I have," she replied, keeping the door only ajar. "And my answer is no." Alistair's expression immediately changed. The fake smile vanished, revealing something darker. "I hope you don't regret that decision." "I won't regret it. We'll see." "Does your little husband know he's married to an academic fraud, a woman who stole other professors' work? He knows the truth about what you did." Alistair seemed genuinely surprised. "Oh, really? And what exactly do you think you can prove?" "More than you imagine." Lucy closed the door and immediately called Daniel. He was home in 10 minutes, along with Michael Sterling, who had been called for an emergency meeting. "He's feeling pressured," the investigator observed. "That's good. Pressured people make mistakes." "What kind of mistakes?" Daniel asked. "They'll try to accelerate their schemes. Perhaps they'll contact accomplices carelessly or try to dispose of evidence hastily. And if he tries to harm Lucy publicly before we manage to expose him, then we'll be ready to retaliate immediately." Michael had prepared a strategy for that possibility. He had contacts in the media who could publish the true version of the story if Alistair tried to spread lies. "But I prefer to avoid a public war," he explained. "It's better to resolve this behind the scenes in a way that forces Alistair to admit the truth without causing further damage to anyone." "How?" "By confronting him with irrefutable evidence of his other crimes. If he knows he can be arrested or lose everything, he might accept a deal where he confesses about Lucy's case in exchange for not being prosecuted for the other frauds." It was a risky plan, but it seemed to be the best available option. On the weekend, Daniel suggested they do something relaxing to take their minds off the stressful situation. "How about we go to the Tate Modern?" 17, he proposed. "The weather's beautiful, and you seem to need a distraction." Lucy thought it was a good idea. It had been years since she had visited the Contemporary Art Museum in London, and she had always enjoyed walking through the gardens and observing the art installations. In the car, heading to the Tate Modern, they talked about lighter topics: art, music, places they had visited, books they had recently read. It was comforting to have a normal conversation after weeks, focused only on problems and investigations. "May I ask a question?" Daniel said while driving. "Of course. If we manage to resolve all this with Alistair and clear your name, what do you want to do next?" Lucy thought for a moment. "Go back to teaching is what I've always wanted to do. Teach literature, supervise research, work with young people interested in learning. In London? I don't know. Maybe it would be better to start in another city, another county, where no one knows me, and I can have a completely fresh start." Daniel was silent for a few moments. "And what about us?" he finally asked. Lucy felt her heart race. It was the question they had both been avoiding, asking directly. "I don't know," she replied honestly. "Our situation is very complicated." "Why?" "Because it started as a business agreement. How can I be sure that what I'm feeling is real, and not just gratitude or convenience? And how can I be sure you're not just here for the money and security?" These were fair and difficult questions to answer. "Perhaps we'll only find out when we no longer have any practical reason to be together," Lucy said. "Perhaps." At the Tate Modern, they walked through the gardens in comfortable silence, observing the art installations and enjoying the fresh air and tranquility of the place. It was the first day in weeks that Lucy had managed to completely relax and not think about the problems surrounding them. "Thank you for bringing me here," she said, as they sat on a bench observing a sculpture. "Thank you for agreeing to come. It's been a long time since I felt so peaceful. Even with all the problems we're facing, especially because of them, you made me realize there are more important things in life than work and family obligations." Lucy looked at him. The afternoon sun illuminated his blue eyes, and there was an expression of serenity on his face that she rarely saw when they were at home. Like what? True companionship. Having someone to share difficult times and good times with. Feeling like I'm not facing everything alone. She understood perfectly. It was exactly how she felt too. "Daniel, I know. It's risky for us to get this close, but I can't help it." Lucy couldn't help it either. With each passing day, she felt more connected to him. It wasn't just physical attraction, although that also existed. It was a deep affinity, a sense that she had finally found someone who understood her completely. But there was still the matter of their agreement and the situation with Alistair and the uncertainty about the future. On Monday, Michael Sterling called with urgent news. "I need to speak with you immediately," he said. "I've discovered something important about Alistair." They met at the investigator's office in central London. Michael had a grave expression when he greeted them. "I arranged this meeting here because I suspect your house might be under surveillance," he explained. "How so?" Daniel asked. "Alistair hired a private investigator to find out everything he can about you, especially about your marriage." Lucy felt her blood run cold. "He suspects our marriage is fake. He doesn't just suspect it. He has evidence." Michael opened a folder and showed several photographs. Lucy saw herself in the images, from the days she lived in the city square until the moment she first got into Daniel's car. "How did he get these photos? He's probably been following you for weeks or perhaps months, maybe since you left the university." Daniel examined the photographs with a grim expression. "What does he intend to do with this?" "Blackmail both of you. If he proves the marriage is fake, he can ruin Daniel's reputation and make him lose the inheritance." "And as for me?" Lucy asked. "For you, it would be even worse. You'd be seen as a con artist who took advantage of a rich man. That would destroy any chance of you recovering your academic reputation." The situation had become much more serious than any of them had imagined. "What options do we have?" Daniel asked. "Few, and all risky. We can try to expose his crimes before he exposes yours, or you can consider making the marriage official for real." "How so?" Lucy asked. "If you truly fell in love and want to be together, the marriage ceases to be fake. Alistair would have nothing left to use against you." Lucy and Daniel looked at each other. It was a logical solution, but one that carried enormous emotional implications. "We need to think about it," Daniel said. "We don't have much time," Michael warned. "From the information I gathered, Alistair intends to act in the next few days." On the way back home, Lucy and Daniel barely spoke. Both were absorbed in their own thoughts, processing the new reality of the situation. At home, they sat in the library in armchairs facing each other, trying to decide what to do. "Michael is right," Daniel finally said. "If we decide we want to be together for real, Alistair can't harm us. But what if we're making this decision just out of fear and not real love? How can we be sure of what we feel in the midst of all this pressure? Perhaps we can't be absolutely certain. Perhaps we have to trust what we feel now and hope it's real." Lucy got up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where they had walked together so many times in recent weeks. "Daniel, can I tell you something?" "Of course. In recent days, I've imagined what it would be like to continue living here with you, not for the money or the security, but because I feel at home by your side." Daniel got up and approached her. "I've been thinking about that too. This house was always too big and quiet for me. Since you arrived, it finally feels like a home." They stood side by the window, not touching, but feeling each other's closeness. "So, what do we do?" Lucy asked. We decide if we want to try to make this work for real, independently of Alistair, independently of the inheritance, independently of all the practical reasons that brought us here. And what do you want? Daniel turned to look at her. I want to try. I want to see if what I'm feeling is real and lasting. I want to give us a chance. Lucy felt her heart race. It was what she wanted too, but she was afraid to admit it. And if it doesn't work, then at least we'll know we tried. It's better than spending the rest of our lives wondering, what if? Lucy took a deep breath and made a decision. All right, let's try. Daniel smiled for the first time in days. Really? For real? He moved closer and gently touched her face. May I kiss you for real this time? In response, Lucy leaned into him. The kiss was soft at first, hesitant, as if both were still testing the limits of this new dynamic between them. Then it deepened, laden with weeks of suppressed tension and feelings they had tried to ignore. When they separated, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. So, are we really married now? I think so. How do you feel? Scared? Hopeful? Happy? Me too. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please hit the like button. And, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. That helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. That night, they talked late into the evening about how their new relationship would work. They decided to take things slowly, get to know each other better, as a real couple, not as people playing a role. I want to get to know the real Lucy, Daniel said. Not the lecturer who lost everything, not the woman who was living on the streets, but who you really are beneath all those circumstances. And I want to get to know the real Daniel, she replied. Not just the successful businessman or the devoted grandson, but the person you are when no one is watching. It was a new beginning for both of them, but they still had to face Alistair. The next morning, Michael Sterling called with a risky proposal. I want to confront Alistair directly with the evidence we have about his other crimes, he said. If we do it the right way, perhaps we can force him to back down without needing to expose your marriage. How? Danielle asked. By scheduling a meeting with him, showing him that we know about the lecturer from the University of Bristol and the researcher from Cambridge, and making it clear that we can ruin his life, just as he ruined the lives of other people. It was risky, but it might work. Men like Alistair only understood the language of force. The meeting was scheduled for late afternoon at a discreet hotel in central London. Daniel insisted on accompanying Lucy and Michael. Alistair arrived promptly with a confident expression that quickly vanished when he saw he wasn't dealing with just Lucy. What is this? He asked when they sat down in a private room. A conversation about uncomfortable truths, Michael replied, opening a folder full of documents specifically about your extra-legal activities over the past 5 years. Alistair's expression changed completely when he saw photographs, bank statements, and testimonies from other victims spread across the table. I don't know what you're talking about. No? Then let me clarify, Michael said calmly. Dr. Eleanor Green, University of Bristol. Dr. Richard Thompson, University of Cambridge. Dr. Lucy Roberts, University College London. 3 academics falsely accused of academic plagiarism in situations where you had privileged access to the investigation processes. Alistair was visibly pale. Now, that doesn't prove anything, doesn't it? And what about the irregular payments you received from companies interested in favoring certain candidates in academic competitions? Or the falsified documents we found in your university office? It was a bluff, but Michael presented it with such conviction that Alistair believed it. What do you want? We want you to stop harassing Lucy, Daniel said, speaking for the first time in the meeting. We want you to publicly admit that the accusations against her were false, and we want you to discreetly retire from academic life before we decide to expose everything we know about you. And if I don't accept? Michael leaned forward. Then, tomorrow morning, every university in the country will receive a detailed report about your activities. The media will also receive copies, and the police will receive evidence of federal crimes related to corruption in higher education institutions. Alistair was silent for several minutes, clearly calculating his options. And if I do what you ask, what guarantee is there that you won't pursue me afterwards? Because we have no interest in destroying your life, Lucy replied. We just want you to stop destroying others. I need time to think. You have 24 hours, Michael said. Tomorrow at the same time, we want your answer. Alistair left the meeting clearly affected. Michael was sure he would accept the deal. Men like him are fundamentally cowards, he explained. When they realize they can lose everything, they always choose to save what they can. But Lucy wasn't so optimistic. What if he decides to harm us before backing down? He still has those photographs of our wedding. Then we'll be ready to retaliate immediately, Daniel replied. We have enough evidence to destroy his credibility faster than he can destroy ours. That night, Lucy and Daniel had dinner at home, trying to maintain normalcy despite the tension. They talked about plans for the future, assuming everything would work out with Alistair. When all this is over, Daniel said, I'd like to get to know your academic field better. Perhaps you can teach me about English literature, for real, this time, not just to pretend in front of my family. Do you really want to learn, or are you just trying to impress me? I want to learn. I want to understand the things that are important to you. Lucy smiled. It was one of the things she most appreciated about Daniel, his genuine willingness to grow and learn. And I'd like to understand your business better, she said. I've always been interested in how family businesses work, especially those that have passed through several generations. Our company has an interesting history. My great-grandfather started with a small hardware store, and each generation expanded it into new areas. And what do you want to add to the family legacy? Daniel thought for a moment. Social projects, education for disadvantaged communities, using the company's resources to make a difference in people's lives. Lucy was impressed. It was a noble vision and very different from the stereotype of the greedy businessman. Is that why it's so important for you to receive the inheritance to implement those projects? Partly, also because it's a family legacy I don't want to lose. But mainly, yes, for the social projects. It was another reason for Lucy to admire him. Daniel wasn't just fighting for money or status, but for an opportunity to do good. The next morning, Michael Sterling called early. Alistair accepted our conditions, he announced. He's going to sign a confession, admitting he falsified the evidence against you, Lucy, and he's going to take early retirement from the university. Lucy felt a mix of relief and disbelief. How so? He just accepted? We discovered more things about him, overnight evidence that he was involved in even worse schemes than we thought. When we presented it to him this morning, he realized he had no choice. What kind of evidence? I prefer not to go into details over the phone. Come to my office this afternoon, and I'll explain everything personally. At Michael Sterling's office, they discovered the full extent of Alistair's crimes. In addition to sabotaging academic careers, he had been involved in university tender frauds, illegal sales of places in postgraduate courses, and even money laundering schemes. It's much bigger than any of us imagined, Michael explained. When I showed him we had evidence of these activities, he was desperate to reach an agreement, and the confession about my case, it's already signed and legally registered. You are officially absolved, Lucy. Lucy felt tears in her eyes. After so many months of humiliation and hopelessness, she finally had her reputation back. Thank you, she whispered to Michael. Thank you for not giving up, and thank you to you too, she said to Daniel, taking his hand. For believing in me and providing the resources to uncover the truth. You don't have to thank me, he replied, squeezing her hand. We did it together. In the following days, Alistair's confession spread rapidly through academia. The university issued an official statement exonerating Lucy and apologizing for the treatment she had received. Other universities began contacting her, offering her positions. How do you feel? Daniel asked one evening as they celebrated at home with a bottle of champagne. Free, Lucy replied. For the first time in over a year, I feel completely free. And what do you want to do with that freedom? Lucy thought carefully before answering. I want to go back to teaching, but here in London, if you agree. I want to stay close to you. Are you sure? Don't you want a fresh start somewhere else? My fresh start is here with you. Daniel smiled and kissed her gently. And what about our original agreement? The 6 months? The divorce? I think we can tear up that contract, don't you think? Definitely. 6 months later, Lucy was back in the classroom, this time as a senior lecturer at the University of Bristol 9. Her students adored her, her colleagues respected her, and she finally felt she was where she belonged. Daniel had implemented his social projects, including a scholarship program for underprivileged students who wanted to pursue an academic career. Lucy helped him select the beneficiaries, ensuring that talented young people had opportunities they themselves had almost lost. Robert, Daniel's grandfather, had become one of Lucy's biggest champions. He frequently told anyone who would listen that his grandson had chosen an exceptional woman. She has grit, he used to say. She went through difficulties that would break many people, but she emerged stronger. Penelope, surprisingly, also came to respect Lucy after learning the full story. She even apologized for her initial hostility. I thought you were just another gold digger after the family money, she admitted during a family lunch. I didn't know you had been through all that. One evening, as they were in the library reading together, Daniel asked a question that had been on both their minds for weeks. "Lucy, do you regret anything about how everything happened between us?" She closed the book and looked at him. "Nothing important." "And you?" "Me neither. Although our beginning was unconventional, perhaps it was exactly as it needed to be. If we had met under normal circumstances, perhaps we would never have connected so deeply." "How so?" "Because when we met, both of us were at vulnerable points in our lives. You with the pressure of the inheritance, me with my desperate situation. That forced us to be completely honest with each other from the beginning." Daniel nodded. In conventional relationships, people often hide their problems and insecurities until very late in the relationship. They had to face difficulties together from day one. "Can I ask you something?" Lucy said. "Always. When did you know you were falling in love with me?" "For real, not just fulfilling our agreement?" Daniel thought carefully. "It was when you stood up to Alistair that first time he appeared here. I saw the courage you had to face him, even when you were afraid. At that moment, I realized you were much stronger than any circumstance you faced." "And you? When did you know?" "When you defended me at lunch with your family, even knowing you detested Wuthering Heights," she replied, laughing. "I saw that you were willing to protect me even when you weren't obliged to." They smiled, remembering that moment that now seemed to have happened a long time ago. 2 years later, Lucy was pregnant with their first child. The pregnancy had been planned, and both were excited about the prospect of starting a real family. "How will we explain to our children how we met?" Daniel asked one night, his hands resting on Lucy's belly. "We'll tell them the truth," she replied, "that sometimes the best things in life happen in the most unexpected ways. And if they ask why you were living on the streets, we'll teach them about injustice, about how sometimes bad people harm good people, and about how important it is to fight for the truth, even when it seems impossible, and about how you agreed to marry a stranger." Lucy smiled. "We'll say that sometimes you have to take a risk to find happiness, and that your father was very persuasive." Daniel laughed and kissed her forehead. "I'm grateful every day that you took that risk." "Me too." 3 years after their first encounter in the city square, Lucy published a book about her experience, Reconstruction, a story of injustice, love, and second chances. It became a bestseller and was used in academic ethics courses at several universities. In the dedication, she wrote, "To Daniel, who taught me that happy endings are possible when you find someone willing to fight by your side. And to all who face injustice, never give up on the truth." The royalties were donated to a fund that helped academics facing unjust professional persecutions. It was a way to ensure that other people in similar situations had the resources to fight for their reputations. Alistair, for his part, completely disappeared from academia. Rumors said he had moved to the countryside and was working in a family business far from universities. None of his victims ever sought him out for confrontations or revenge. The truth had been enough. Michael Sterling continued working as a private investigator, but specialized in cases of academic corruption. He said Lucy's case had opened his eyes to a much broader problem in the UK university system. One day, 5 years after that first encounter in the square, Lucy and Daniel took their 2-year-old son to play in the same park where it had all begun. The child ran between the benches, laughing and playing, completely oblivious to the dramatic story that had unfolded there years before. "Remember how you felt that day?" Daniel asked, pointing to the bench, where he had found her looking for food. "I remember," Lucy said, watching their child play. "I felt lost, hopeless, as if my life had ended. And now I know that sometimes life needs to end completely to be able to start anew in the right way." Daniel hugged her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Thank you for accepting my mad proposal that day. Thank you for making the proposal. Even if it was selfish on your part, you were only thinking about solving your inheritance problem. But you didn't know you were saving me too. Sometimes we do the right thing for the wrong reasons, and sometimes the right people find each other at the most improbable moments." They stood there, watching their son play in the park, thinking about all the impossible coincidences that had led them to that moment. If Lucy hadn't lost everything, if Daniel hadn't had the pressure of the inheritance, if Alistair hadn't been so ambitious, if Michael Sterling hadn't been so competent, any change in that chain of events could have resulted in a completely different outcome. But all those things had happened exactly as they needed to happen for them to find each other. "Do you believe in destiny?" Lucy asked. "I believe in choices," Daniel replied. "I believe destiny can put opportunities in our path, but it's up to us to decide if we're going to take them. And do you think we made good use of our opportunity?" Daniel looked at his son, his wife, at the life they had built together, from an absurd proposal in a central London square. "I think we used it perfectly." That night, as they tucked their son into bed, Lucy found an old letter in a drawer, which was the first version of the contract Daniel had sketched out for their original agreement. 6 months of fake marriage in exchange for £500,000 British pounds. She showed the paper to Daniel. "Look what I found." He laughed, seeing his own handwriting scrawling clauses about no physical intimacy and automatic divorce after the agreed period. "I should have asked a solicitor to draft this properly," he commented. "Why?" "Because this contract has several loopholes that either of us could use to break the agreement." "Like what?" "Like here where it says the marriage would only be an act. It doesn't specify what would happen if one of us genuinely fell in love." Lucy smiled. "A very convenient contractual flaw. Extremely convenient." She tore the paper into small pieces. "Now there's no evidence that our marriage began as a business agreement. You're destroying important historical evidence. I'm creating space for our true story." Daniel kissed her gently. "What's our true story?" "The story of two people who met at the right moment in the right way and decided to build a life together based on love, respect, and mutual understanding." "I like that version better." "Me too." Years later, when they told their story to friends or family, they never mentioned the details of the original agreement. They spoke of a casual encounter in a square, of an atypical passion at first sight, and of how they had decided to marry quickly because they knew it was the right thing to do. Technically, they weren't lies. They were just simplified versions of a much more complex truth. Sometimes the deeper truth isn't in the specific details of how something happened, but in what resulted from those events. And what resulted from the improbable encounter between a desperate businessman and a struggling lecturer was a happy family, rebuilt careers, transformed lives, and proof that second chances can lead to even better endings than the first. 10 years later, when Daniel and Lucy renewed their vows in an intimate ceremony with family and close friends, Robert made a toast that perfectly summarized their journey. "To my grandson Daniel and my granddaughter Lucy, who taught us that true love can be born from the most improbable circumstances, grow in the most difficult conditions, and flourish more beautifully than any fairy tale. You demonstrated that when two people are willing to fight together for truth, for justice, and for love, there is no obstacle they cannot overcome." All the guests applauded, but for Lucy and Daniel, the most important words were those that didn't need to be said aloud, that they had found in each other, not just romantic partners, but true life partners. And as they left that celebration hand in hand under the London stars, both knew that their story was just beginning. Because the best happy endings are not those where everything ends perfectly, but those where everything begins again even better. End of story. And you, dear listener, what did you think of Lucy and Daniel's journey? Do you believe that true love can be born from the most unexpected situations? Have you ever faced moments in your life where everything seemed lost, but you ended up discovering it was just the beginning of something better? Share your experiences in the comments. Stories like these remind us that it's never too late to start over, and that sometimes the best opportunities come disguised as challenges. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories that show life always holds wonderful surprises for those brave enough to believe in second chances.